Next question is from Kamui X. Is it okay to train to failure if I'm only focusing on a muscle group once a week? For example, arm day.
You know, failure training is very interesting, and I tend to recommend most people avoid it, but I will say this. In a short period of time, it can produce some pretty fast muscle gains, but you got to program it properly, and nobody programs failure training properly. Everybody throws it into the workouts on a regular basis. The results from failure training fade real quick, and you hit this fatigue from it. I'll tell you what, I can do 9 sets for back with good intensity, and it doesn't fry me like one all-out set to failure. And I know this because I've been experimenting with failure training and programming with failure training, and I'm coming to some interesting conclusions. But for the average lifter, for the most part, avoiding it's probably a good idea.
Well, you know why that is? Because there's so many variables that come into play when you push to that limit. Yes, because you're pushing those outer boundaries, that it could have some extra benefits, but it also requires a lot of other things have to be in place. Like, for example, like if my sleep is really off or my diet is really off, and then I fucking failure train that workout, the likelihood that I'm going to reap the max benefits from that failure training because of those little variables is very minimal. But I could go into the gym and just slightly progressively overload my body or challenge myself a little bit, and go and leave 2 in the tank and progress my body still, even on not the most optimal sleep and maybe not the most optimal diet. It requires a more dialed in person. Not to mention there's probably the genetic variance of some people's bodies that can just handle being punished like that, and other people that are very sensitive to that. So I think why this is such a debated thing or a hot topic, because there's so many, and why we lean so much in the opposite direction of why. Because you can build the most amazing physique, the most competitive physique, and never train to failure. I will make that argument.
Well, the studies compare it side to side, and they show that.
Yes.
They show that there's no...
So if you can do it without it, and you're risking more by playing with it, it's like,
I will say, though, if you program it right, it can be very interesting.
I use it.
That's the thing, is you can see great result initially. And I think that what it does is it draws people that are most likely to abuse it. Because they get excited by the initial results. They think that this is like, it's applied for mental discipline. It's applied for their sports training. It's like most like hard work at work, like all that same button they've been hitting for everything. And then it works initially, but now it's not working for them, but maybe I got to go harder. So I just see it.
Such a great point.
It just goes in that.
It does attract probably the wrong person.
Of course.
It doesn't attract the person that I was saying who's got everything all balanced and it's got great sleep, great diet, like not a lot of stress, and they like manage all that. And then that person, okay, which ironically, that's the yogi type person who avoids training that way.
They should probably train to failure.
They should probably train to failure in their life more often, and would reap some massive benefits from it because they do such a good job of managing all the other rest of the stresses in their life that adding that into their training routine would probably benefit them big time when it comes to muscle. But it attracts the person that you're talking about, the caffeine junkie, not sleeping very much, burning the candle at both ends, and when I hit the workout, fucking crush too. Crushing everything.
Yeah, people really underestimate how much it taxes the body. I'm telling you, one set of real failure, okay? When I say real failure, like I have to put the bar down on the safeties, okay? Of real failure squats, one set will hammer me more than a 9-set decent intensity leg workout or even 12-set.
Yeah.
It takes me way less time. I'm done in 15 minutes, but I am fried. And I know because I've had Doug experiment because I'm figuring out some programming with this, and stay tuned. But even Doug will tell me his 15-minute failure workout, and he's like, dude, my legs are, I'm like exhausted. So it taxes the body in a very interesting way. Here's the other thing it does. It's more ripe for injury. It just is. Like when you go fatigued, your form goes out the window. If you don't have like perfect technique and you fail, the risk of injury starts to get really high. So
much higher.
Yeah. So you really got to be smart with this kind of training. So
I know, and I know I'm like pushing against it. I use it. Okay. So I'm not somebody who's not like, I just think that, and we don't know who this person is, right? So I'm not. This is also hard. Like if I knew who I'm looking at, who I'm talking to, and I know kind of their background, how they've been lifting, where they're at in their journey, the advice changes, right?
Sure.
Like I definitely, depending on who I'm talking to, I might be like, hey, you know what? Yeah, let's start to play with a little bit of failure training. We've got all these other things we've dialed in really well. Let's start dabbling with this a little bit. And let's see what kind of response you get. And then let me hear your feedback. Like I absolutely would do that with clients, but I also had control of that. I knew who I'm talking to. When I'm talking to the general population and knowing the kid I was who would probably be listening to this podcast and stuff coming into weight training, I'd be better off listening to someone who's telling me like, you don't need to train to
I got
failure.
better results when I stopped training to failure.
So did I.
Straight up. And
So did I.
again, it's because the programming is really tricky with failure. Now I'm starting to really realize. And I tell you what, failure is a lot further than you think. Like you do a set of, like I said, squats to failure. You think you're about to fail and you're like, oh, I got another rep. And then you're like, oh shit, I got another rep. And it is nasty. It is grueling.
Yeah,
and
but
it hammers the body.
To your point too, that really hard to keep your core and everything really tight while you.
Bro, you
know,
have
your
to
legs are
focus
fatiguing.
so much on your form and technique when you go to failure. Way more than if you don't. And I know what I'm doing. So you get the average person going to failure and it just goes out the window.